of how we're going to go. So yeah, I'll get started if you like. So kind of why business blog? These are all quite, you have to be careful with this stuff because it's all quite subjective. But the most important thing as far as the reasoning behind business blogging is that it's very valuable for search, but it's only valuable for search if you do it in a particular way. Search engine optimization kicked off. Blogging was really important in the old days because it was about you know, any kind of relevant content was going to be really useful for Google and helping you to get indexed. So loads of SEO companies stuffed a load of blogs full of nonsense and keywords, and it just wasted everybody's time and kind of devalued the nature of blogs and the way things have worked. Google have worked really hard on their algorithm updates and getting things, you know, changing things around. Hummingbird in particular, I think, was probably the smartest one, but going back even kind of Panda and Penguin, which are, if you want to be nerdy, you can go have a look at those. But anyway, the different updates that Google did specifically to combat that sort of keyword stuffing and algorithm gaming to get people higher up the charts. But if you have got a decent blog that has got significant relevant information in there, that's going to help you get indexed better, you know, in the areas that are relevant to you on Google. You know, that's as good as I can do without caveating it anymore. Do is use your blog not to stuff it full of keywords, use it to evidence and highlight your expertise and what differentiates you as a business from other companies and other organizations. Don't forget this lunch and learn is specifically around business blogging. So any of this that's got anything to do with personal blogging is slightly different in a lot of ways. So the other area that's important for is speaking directly to your model customer, which is helping your model customer particularly understand exactly why they should be dealing with you and what you can offer that's better than anybody else per se. So that's really important as well. And again, positioning your business as a trusted source. I'm going to get into the model customer in a bit more detail further in when we're talking about, you know, how you should blog and the structure of the way you should do it. But essentially, you know, your model customers is fundamentally what your blog is for and who you should be aiming it directly at. And again, positioning your business as a trusted source is helping people to understand the key differentiators between you and everybody else. If you've been doing this for a long time and you're good at what you do and you've developed your experience over a significant period, then we'll highlight those expertise through the blog, and it's a good way for you to sort of I can't even say it, channel that away from the website itself, because your website, the main aspects of your website, the bulk of them are going to be quite static. They're going to be kind of saying, this is who we are, this is what we do, aren't we great, contact us, at kind of general SME level. That's most websites are just going to be. So the blog is a great place to be more dynamic, more engaging, and significantly build out, you know, how things can work for you and how they should work for you. Does that make sense?
Sounds good.
Great. Okay, so here's some examples. Now, this is by no means exhaustive. Obviously, everybody knows that. If I go back to, I've moved past some areas there, which I didn't want to do. Okay, so where to business blog? Specifically, there are kind of 5 or 6 key channels that are an opportunity to do. There's some of them I haven't mentioned here. I haven't mentioned Medium in particular because I don't think necessarily it's particularly good for business to business or business to consumer direct for an organization. What I would say is there are some advantages and disadvantages to a lot of the different platforms, but for a small business, some of the kind of web development platforms that are out there are just as useful for blogging as any of the specific blogging platforms that used to be around at the time. People still talk about things like Tumblr as well. Don't do that. Blogger is a really basic platform, you know, a Google thing that was set up. It's really simple. It's not particularly good for business, but I mean, if you haven't got much to say and you haven't got a lot of time to say it, to dedicate to your blogging, it might be a good place to. Wix and Squarespace are obviously website building platforms. They're all in one particular place. They all work off a kind of a content wizard that is very easy to use, and they're a really straightforward way to start blogging and to get blogging moving if you're not massively kind of IT literate, but you want to make sure you've got something out there that sort of looks the part, mirrors a lot of what your branding has been or is at the moment, and is really easy to get up there and use if you're non-technical. So those are pretty good. Again, WordPress.com is fine if you can put up with the ads. It's a really straightforward way to work. But my recommendation would be, if you've got any particular kind of technical ability, or you've got a rough idea of kind of how to use a YouTube tutorial and get your head around some of the simple things on the hosting side, WordPress.org it would be the way to go, I would suggest, simply because it was built primarily as a blogging platform that scaled massively out of that because it's so easy to use. There are tons of really good plugins in there that you can pick up fee that'll help things look really good. Hosting should be quite inexpensive, and at the same time, as that develops, it's really easy to get indexed because Google loves it. I mean, 30% of the sites on the internet at the moment, roughly, if not more, are based on WordPress.org at the moment. So that would be my recommendation if that's where you're going to put stuff. But if you've got a specific requirement based on a particular area of your kind of organization or your business, then we'd have a look at that on a case-by-case basis. But my recommendation would be, initially look at WordPress.org if you've got the time and you can get organized on it, or if not, just use one of the builders and get yourself moving. It's really straightforward from a technical point of view. What I would say is that if you don't use WordPress.org and you do use one of the website builders, they can be quite challenging to migrate away from if you do find that that the blogging thing is working really well for you and it's something that you want to scale. So that you've got to, if you do want to build out and you do want to turn this into something that is quite significant for your business, then start as you mean to go on and invest the time in doing things properly on WordPress.org would certainly be my recommendation. Obviously everybody's got a view, but I know from experience that it's worked very well and stood most of my clients in very good stead, unless there is a really good kind of blogging community that's on a different platform, in a different place, that's already maturing, that's got kind of a level of engagement that you're interested in getting involved with, then don't bother with it, don't bother to do it. That's what I would suggest. So yeah, that's where I am with that. Does that make sense to everybody?
There's just one question about my website's being built on WordPress, so I guess it's well indexed.
Yeah.
So I think you've just gone through that. And Emily asked, what social media platforms would you recommend for sharing blogs?
Well, I mean, again, it depends on where your market is. That's down to you doing the kind of the competitor analysis that you should be doing to benchmark where you should put, whether you should be blogging on a particular platform in the first place. I would say that Facebook is a good place to cross post to, but you would limit the size of the post that you're going to do over there. So you would start with kind of a teaser into what you're going to deliver on the website and then move it across there. For a small business, Facebook is great for that sort of thing. Twitter's pretty immediate, but again, it depends on where your people are and whether they're already following you in the first place, and then we probably build out from there depending on the nature of your business. I really like Pinterest as quite an easy way to scale quite quickly as well. There's a lot of really engaged people over there that you can do good work with, but it's a case-by-case basis from a business perspective. So I mean, I'll get into that a little bit further down the line if that's all right, in a bit more detail. So this is the meat of what we were talking about, and this kind of segues nicely into the question that Emily had there. How to blog for your business and how to do that well and how to do that properly. And the key thing really is to establish what your tone of voice is going to be. Once you've decided on the nature of the platform that you're going to use, once you've got a really kind of straightforward template that makes sense to you and looks similar to the kind of the branding that you've been using as a business, then establish your tone of voice, which is making a decision about how your business is going to speak to the customers and other businesses that are out there through the blog post and also ultimately through any responses that you get if you decide that you're going to have comments in there. So this feeds right through from how you speak on social into how that you talk, the tone of voice that's on the website, but principally it's about the blog. The blog is about being conversational, it's about being as friendly and direct as possible, and clear about how you're communicating the specifics of what you can offer, and again, what differentiates you from other people. And once you've established that tone of voice, you've got to be consistent with it. And what I mean by that is that, you know, you can't sort of wander off into something chatty and conversational if you've decided to be quite formal and academic in the way that you've presented the business, because that's a disconnect, and the people that are following you and the people that are engaging with the blog won't readily get involved with that. They'll see you as a bit flaky. So the tone of voice has to remain consistent. It has to stay specifically around how you've decided you want the business to be positioned, and you've got to really hold the line on that to make that work for you. And the hardest way to do that is when you're dealing with comments. If a comment is sort of off beam or inappropriate, or you don't really like the way that they've responded to something, you've got to make sure that when you go back, you stay on message and you don't drift away from that, because it will cost you. And don't forget, the internet never forgets. So anything you put up there that's, you know, the heat of the moment it will cost you. And again, the next step then will be developing the understanding of your model customer. So this is really who you've set the business up to deal with, and who you've set the business up to work with. So it's the type of customer that is most important to you, and the type of customer that sort of is in your sweet spot as far as who will be, you know, commercially viable for you in the medium to long term. So from that point of view, build those out. Who are they? You know, effectively, where do they live digitally is the most important thing to understand, going back to Emily's question. So if they are, you know, very much the kind of audience that will be spending a lot of time hanging around on Facebook all day, liking and sharing things, then that's where the bulk of your time needs to be, moving the blogs across to there and referring to them from that. If it's Twitter, again, same sort of thing. So understand who your model customer is, understand where they live digitally, what sort of thing is going to be important to them, what they like, what they don't like, and make sure that that's where you're positioning the blog towards. Make sure that that's who you're talking to. Don't overpitch or underpitch who you're speaking to when the blogs are out there. The next stage would be create content and schedule a plan, which, you know, is a really straightforward sentence for me to sort of throw out there, but an incredibly complex thing to do in the first instance. So creating a content schedule and a plan, it's best to use a tool for that. So what I would tend to recommend, you know, from my experience, would be using something like Trello. It's free. It's a very easy way to organize content and structure it by either topic or theme, or, you know, around a month. And it's something that you can really readily see where you're putting information, why you're putting information there, and what you're going to do with that going forward. So you can put your blog ideas in there and then flesh those out, build those out. So that's a very straightforward place to do it. So, you know, creating that content schedule and the plan helps to calm you down and makes you relax about what you're going to deliver as when. Because if you've put together kind of 2 or 3 months worth of blog ideas, then you can then decide which you feel most comfortable with moving forward, and which one, you know, which is most appropriate for you to do quickly, which ones you want to do, you know, over time and develop based on a lot of sourcing information, a lot of references, you know, and also anything that's topical you might want to throw in there as well, just so you've got something that you think is going to be useful for that. So as far as kind of creating a content schedule and creating a content plan, putting something like that together on Trello is a very, very sensible thing to do, because the difference between kind of agencies and organizations that blog consistently and blog well, and kind of random business bloggers, is just that discipline and that structure, and making know I'm going to be doing 2 blog posts a week. I'm going to put them out on a Wednesday and I'm going to put them out on a Friday. They're going to go out kind of 10 a.m. Wednesday. They're going to go out 3 p.m. Friday. And, you know, the Wednesday topic is going to be something that's kind of specifically around an overall concern in our industry, for example. And the Friday topic is going to be around something kind of technical that we've noticed that we think that we're good at, and we can do better than somebody else, for argument's sake. So as long as you've got that structure and you've set that schedule up, you give yourself a real chance then of being able to flesh that out with meaningful blog posts and not just reacting to things and not just doing things on a random basis. Because if you do things on a random basis, people won't follow you and you won't get the engagement that you want, because you know you're not committed to it, and that's the way that works on social. If you're not committed, then they're not committed. So that's why the plan and the schedule is fundamentally the most important thing to take away from this. The other thing that kind of builds on that is identifying short form and long form topics. So what I mean by that is some of the topics that you could choose from a blogging perspective could just be a quick burst, 2 or 3 paragraphs that will be, you know, a comment on something or an idea around something that you think that your business could add value to, and it's just you're just throwing that into the mix. They can also be things that can be quite kind of contemporary, which means you know you can move quite agile with them, and you can be quite direct in the way that you approach those in a really simple way, because they don't have to go anywhere else. A long form topic is a topic that you'll build out over time. So you might start with mentioning a topic in one of your social media channels that prompts a little bit of engagement. That will move through into a short form blog post where again you'll have 2 or 3 paragraphs around that, and then if that develops into the engagement that you would anticipate, because don't forget you flagged this as what you expect to be a long form topic, you would then build that out into you know, the fully fledged kind of all singing, all dancing blog post that kind of goes into quite a bit of detail and gives people kind of a 10-15 minute long read, but you'd never go nowhere near that kind of thing until the short form has got some level of engagement and conversion. But if you flag that as something that you think would be a long form topic from the start, you can get yourself prepared with content to build that out. By the same token, in terms of long form topics, you can get 2 or 3 short form blog posts out of a decent long form topic. So that can help you out quite a lot with content as you're building things through. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, I've got into some pretty kind of...
Just got a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
Someone's asked, do you have an example of a Trello schedule? And then Sanjay's asked really about content, but I think you're going through content as we go. But, so the main one is the Trello example.
I will share a Trello example in the subsequent email that comes out to you after we've done the lunch and learn, because I'll put something together for you so that you can see how that would work based on this conversation. So yeah, I'll share that with you as part of this if everybody wants to receive the email afterwards.
Yeah, thank you. Because, can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good to have that kind of explanation, because Trello can be it's got quite a lot of functionality in there if you use it properly. You know, it's got checklists, it's got ways of putting different boards on there and things like that. So it'd be good to see how you organise it and how you structure it so that it's in a good format to use for this kind of process. Thank you.
Yeah. There's no problem. I mean, it's just, I'll put that together for you and I'll get that across with this, because I think if it's going to add value, then that's no problem. But I mean, I think what I tend to do is that kind of thing from my perspective, and the reason why I'm not sharing it right now is because that will work on a client by client basis. So I will tailor, because as you say, Trello's got such great functionality, I'll tailor it around what people's requirements are. So, you know, if I know that someone's very visual, then the board will be very visual for argument's sake. And if I know that, you know, they prefer to work quarterly rather than weekly, then, you know, the board will change in that regard. So what I'll share is an example of a monthly board and how I would recommend structuring content week by week for a blog, if that's helpful. Okay, great. So the other aspect of that, if we move on from short form and long form, is adding visual content. Visual content is a big deal in terms of getting engagement and retaining engagement. So, and you know, it's finding images and making sure that they add value to the post, but also you've got to make sure from a copyright perspective that, you know, they're yours and they're yours to use, or they're available for you to use. So if you're appropriating somebody's content, that's not cool. you need to make sure that you credit them and give them a link back to it. So if you're going to share somebody's, if there's a really good infographic, for example, that's from somebody who's in the same space as you, but isn't necessarily a competitor because maybe they're in the States or New Zealand or something, then what you would do is you would email them, ask if you could share the infographic, and if they give the appropriate agreement to you, then you would put the link onto your site while sharing the infographic at the same time. As long as you give people credit and there's reciprocity, as I mentioned further down, as far as the link building side of things, that's fine. If you don't do that, if you just take people's stuff, then when people do reverse image searches, they'll hit you quite hard on that. I had that in the past with a Getty image that was shared on a blog post for a football club I was working with, accidentally by one of the members of staff, and it wound up costing us a few £100 because they just hit it straight away. So you've got to be really, really careful. Make sure you ask permission if you've got something good. As I say, permission will normally be forthcoming quite quickly because everybody wants links, everybody wants to be, to have stuff shared. Google likes that, it evidences authority, so you will get it 9 times out of 10, I would suggest. But make sure if you do add somebody else's stuff that you give them credit for it. On the visual content side, if you've got any of your own images, definitely use them, and make sure you add what they call alt text, alternative text, so you tell Google what it is that it's an image of, because otherwise Google can't read images, so you have to tell Google what an image is. So make sure you've got the alt text in there so it works the way it's supposed to. That goes for YouTube as well, by the way, which is why you'll see most videos have got the subtitles switched on, because again, it's so that, and also they've got a transcript if they've got any sense, because it just means that Google knows what that's a video of, and it really helps a lot with indexing. But yeah, definitely do the video side of things, and definitely do the image side of things if you can. Manage your own expectations. So that's really about, this is a blog post your marketing push for your business. It's not the be all and end all, and you're not JK Rowling. So, don't start thinking that you're going to spend an awful lot of time on this, because you aren't. You need to set yourself aside, say, right, okay, I'm going to be able to do 2-3 hours a week tops on putting together these blog posts. Here's the blog posts that I've decided are most relevant for me for this month. This is when I'm going to do this. This is how big it's going to be. These are potential images that I'm going to put together for it, and then just move on. What you don't want to be doing is spending kind of 2 or 3 days trying to put something amazing together, because it takes away from the business, and it won't necessarily add a huge amount of value to you going forward. Most people who've blogged consistently for organizations, they start off trying to, do something unbelievable and game changing, and then they wind up posting kind of really direct, straightforward posts that just add value to the reader when they're skimming through it, but don't necessarily, engage them too much from a literary perspective, or they just give them just enough reason to say, these guys know what they're talking about, I should probably be dealing with them, and then going to your website to find out more about you. That's kind of as far as you need to go from a business blogging perspective, because the fact that you've done a business blog, and you've done a business blog consistently, will put your head and shoulders above probably about 60% of the businesses out there, because you've taken the time to try and do something properly, and Google will love you for it, especially on Google Local, which is what a lot of us really want to push over the next kind of year or so, because they're going for the mobile first thing, and if the blog's on point and you've got your details there, then that's going to help you massively with Google Local as well. So yeah, just doing it is going to make a difference, no matter how mediocre it may feel to you when it starts. As I say, when you find your voice properly, you'll be fine. And then reciprocity and link building, which I've touched on. If you've got something that you've done that's half decent that you'd like people to share, push it about to people in the same space. If somebody's talked about something on their blog that you've been following that isn't necessarily a competitor, give them a nudge in the comments to say that you've done something similar. Maybe share a link that way, and then ask for some kind of reciprocity within there if they want to post about something that you've done. Everybody's looking for content. Everybody's looking for opportunities to share things that are relevant for their audience, and this is reciprocity is a good way to do that. You're doing each other's homework essentially you're helping each other to build things out, and by creating a network to do that, you all lift each other up. And as far as Google is concerned, they consider you to be more and more relevant depending on the nature of the links that you've got, and the authority of the people that you've got a link from. I mean, obviously, the golden arrow is having a link from the BBC, for example, because obviously the BBC has got a huge amount of domain authority from Google's point of view. So if you've got a link from them, then that's the BBC basically technically kind of stamping their approval on an element of what you're all about, which Google absolutely loves. So from that point of view, any local newspapers, anything like that you get any kind of PR from, try and get some reciprocal links into the blog and push that out, and that will help a lot. I'm drifting into SEO a bit, but I guess that's a big part of what blogs are all about, as we pointed out. And another thing that's a bit of a debate is comments on and off. So if you decide you're going to have comments on your blog, are you going to, how are you going to respond to those? How are you going to deal with those? How are you going to handle them if they're negative? And how much time are you going to commit to making sure that you check on the comments? That's really important, because if you put comments on there and you leave something up and then you don't come back for a week or so and that's just been sat there, then that potentially engaged customer's just going to wander off. But if you've got the comments switched off, then potentially they could go over to the website and ask a question over there instead. So you've got to weigh up those choices as a business as to whether you think comments are relevant or not relevant for you, whether that's something that you should be pushing forward on. So these are the choices around how to do things and the way to do things, and these are the things that you've got to think about as you're developing the blog. It's a pretty straightforward thing to do once you've established what your tone of voice is and the platform that you want to use. Fundamentally, the most important thing that you've got to do is creating the content and the schedule, and make sure that you plan that in the way that you want to do it, and then the rest of it you can build out around there. But if you've got some good topics and they're relevant and they're appropriate and the tone of voice is right, then, as I say, you've got a real differentiator between you and a lot of the other businesses that are out there that are just pumping out really bland posts about that essentially just kind of news releases around what stuff that should be on the website, rather than blog posts that are trying to be interesting and relevant. So that's kind of where the presentation thing finishes. So what I've done here is I've given some ideas of I'll call it C2C. I do apologize, that should say B2C, a bit of a blooper there. Anyway, these are content categories as far as business to consumer are concerned, and why people get involved with different types of posts. And if you want to go and have a look over at HubSpot, some great resources around that over there. Identity is the type of post that people kind of get involved with. Then we've also got kind of educational, and you've also got emotional. So if you're building stuff on a B2C brand and you're putting stuff around in that space as a B2C brand, these are the type of blog posts that you need to be thinking about putting stuff together around. So whether it's educational about the nature of your product, kind of informs people about the nature of what you can deliver within news and current events. And then also on the emotional side, if you're going to try and help people in a situation like everybody's in today, then you've got to think about how your blog post would fit around those sort of narratives. So that's kind of the type of content categories you would think about for a B2C blog, for argument's sake. Then moving on to that, these are the type of influencers that are out there. When we were talking about building links and reciprocity, these are the kind of people that you'll be coming across. Thank goodness I wrote B2C there instead of C2C. We could have been developing a whole new category, but never mind. So these are educators, validators, status seekers, and collaborators. This is Forrester stuff. It's pretty basic and it's pretty straightforward, which I wanted to make it really easy for you to understand. So these are the likes of people that you can reach out to, and you will see within your blogging space around your type of organization, and you can reach out to them to get some reciprocal content. So you've got to choose which guys you think are most appropriate for you and just deal with them.